Of course, it is also possible that the help will be seen as supportive. Supportive help is pretty much the polar opposite of threatening help. It usually comes from a non-comparable donor. It does not threaten the recipient's freedom and autonomy. It does not communicate inferiority or dependence, and it is much more consistent with the recipient's positive self-concept. Supportive help produces a non-defensive reaction and positive feelings in the recipient. The threat to self-esteem model also considers how people react to help that is perceived as threatening or as supportive. As you can see in figure 7.5, if the help is seen as supportive, this has the self-consequences of providing support for the recipient's self-esteem. This, in turn, produces certain immediate reactions, such as a good mood in the recipient, good feelings about the helper, more help-seeking, and a decrease in the tendency to engage in self-help and self-improvement. However, if the help is seen as threatening, this challenges the recipient's self-esteem and produces quite different immediate reactions. The specific character of these reactions depends on how threatening help affects the recipient's sense of control over the problem. If it increases the sense of control, the recipient will react negatively to the help and the helper and will be less likely to seek help from others. Instead, the recipient will engage in more self-help and self-improvement and become more independent. Threatening help that decreases the sense of control produces negative reactions toward the help and the helper as well, but it also produces an increase in help-seeking and decrease in self-help. Recipients become more dependent and continue to seek help because they believe that they cannot solve their problems on their own. The final part of the threat to self-esteem model concerns the long-term consequences of receiving help. If the help is supportive of recipient's self-esteem, these consequences are the same as the immediate reactions: positive feelings about being helped and little inclination towards self-help. The long-term effects of help that threatens a person's self-esteem depend on how this action also affects the person's sense of control. If the aid is seen as threatening but increases the recipient's sense of control, there are immediate negative reactions, but later these feelings become positive. Why? It is because the help has enabled the person to feel that he or she can solve his or her own problems, and it has improved the person's self-image. The person is a more competent, independent individual. For example, earlier we asked you to place yourself in a hypothetical situation where you could not solve a math problem, but a classmate could. Now imagine that the classmate who had no trouble with the problem tells you that she wants to show you how to solve it. This may be very threatening to you, but if, in the course of helping you, she gives you information that makes you see the light and realize how to solve this particular problem and other similar ones, this may increase your sense of control and self-confidence in dealing with mathematics. As a result, your long-term reactions to this help will be positive. Assistance that is threatening and decreases the sense of control produces negative immediate reactions and long-term feelings of helplessness and dependency. It convinces the person that he or she needs help to solve problems because he or she is not very competent. The person continues to seek help, but this causes him or her considerable distress. In general, Nadler and Fisher's model has provided a comprehensive framework that describes how adults react to help. It explains and integrates diverse findings on this topic, and it has stimulated productive new research. Schell and Eisenberg, 1992, for instance, adapted the threat to self-esteem model to explain how children react to being helped. One of the major new factors considered in Schell and Eisenberg's model involves the effects of social cognitive development on reactions to being helped. Specifically, their model proposes that a recipient's initial reaction to being helped, i.e., whether the help is seen as threatening or supportive, partially depends on where the recipient is in his or her social and cognitive development. As discussed earlier in Chapter 6, the cognitive development of young children under 8 or 9 years is still in its early stages, and they do not explain their own behavior and the behavior of others in the same way as do adults. As a result, they do not react to being helped in the same ways as do adults. For example, they respond very favorably to a helper, even when they know the helper was told to offer them assistance, and they do not necessarily evaluate themselves negatively when they require help with some task. Nadler, 2002, also extended some of the ideas of the threat to self-esteem model into the domain of intergroup behavior. In an intergroup context, Nadler proposed that intergroup helping can be a way of groups to gain or maintain status over members of other groups. As a consequence, groups striving for or possessing high status will tend to give dependency-oriented help, in which the assistance fully addresses the other's need, rather than autonomy-oriented help, which allows recipients to maintain some independence. Nadler and Halaby further propose that the reactions of recipients of intergroup helping will depend on the relative status of the groups, degree of group identification, the perceived stability of intergroup status relations, and the type of help, dependency-oriented or autonomy-oriented, offered. Specifically, they hypothesize that low-status group members' reactions to assistance will be more negative, arousing negative affect and bias toward the other group. When status relations are unstable and the type of assistance offered is dependency-oriented, receiving help under these circumstances is threatening because dependency on the other group is unwanted as well as an impediment to social change. Nadler and Halaby found support for this model across a series of studies involving minimal groups. Students randomly told that they were either global perceivers or specific perceivers on the basis of their performance on a dot estimation task, and real groups, Israeli Jews and Israeli Arabs. In Israel, Israeli Arabs have lower status than Israeli Jews. In one of their studies, for example, Israeli Arab students were assigned the task of solving 12 anagram psychometric problems, which they were told most people can solve in 10 minutes. To reinforce status differences, students read an information sheet indicating that Israeli Jews perform better on the task than do Israeli Arabs. The stability of this status difference was manipulated by additional information stating that these differences have remained constant over the years, stable status, or has been consistently narrowing, unstable status. 6 of the problems that participants received were very difficult to solve. Partway through the session, the experimenter, who was identifiable as an Israeli Jew or Israeli Arab by the name he introduced himself with, discreetly pointed to the answers to 4 of the 6 difficult items. Thus, Israeli Arab students received unsolicited help from a member of the in-group, Israeli Arab experimenter, or a member of the out-group, Israeli Jew experimenter, while believing that status differences were stable or unstable. As Nadler and Halaby predicted, the Israeli Arab students tended to respond more negatively in terms of affective reactions, e.g. more sad, insecure, and dissatisfied, in attitudes toward the out-group when they received help from an out-group than from an in-group member. Moreover, as expected, this difference was particularly pronounced when status relations between the groups were unstable. Taken together, the findings and theories we have reviewed in this section reveal that people's reactions to receiving unsolicited help can vary greatly, depending on the type of help, the source of assistance, the developmental maturity of the recipient, and the personal and social relationship between the helper and recipient. The same action by the helper can be interpreted as threatening or supportive, depending on the perspective of the recipient. These same principles extend to the processes that determine whether people will actively seek help. According to Nadler, 1991, such decisions are influenced by a. the characteristics of the person in need. Some people are more inclined to seek help than others. B. the specific kind of assistance needed. There are some problems for which people readily seek help. There are other types that they prefer to deal with alone. And C. their relationship with the potential helper. We briefly consider the dynamics of help seeking in the next section. Help seeking. Just as we found in our investigations of potential helpers and the factors that contribute to their decisions to help, both demographic variables, i.e. gender, race, age, socioeconomic status, and personal characteristics, e.g. self-esteem, have been found to play important roles in determining whether a person will request aid. We examine the demographic variables first. Demographic characteristics and help seeking. Demographic characteristics are qualities associated with a person's group membership. Three demographic characteristics that are most strongly related to help seeking are gender, race, ethnicity, and age. Gender plays a substantial role in the decision to seek assistance. The research literature demonstrates that women are significantly more likely to seek help than men, even when the need for assistance is the same. Anita Barbie and her associates argued that it is gender and gender roles, rather than a person's biological sex, that are responsible for these differences in help seeking. That is, it is people's beliefs about how males and females should act, rather than some biological process, e.g. hormonal levels, that best explain this difference. Barbie et al. Focused their interest on a particular kind of help, social support. Barbie et al. Believed that social support involves a dynamic, interactive process between the person who seeks this kind of help and those who provide it. The actions of the person who needs social support play a major role in the quantity and the quality of the support the individual receives, and gender roles affect both the quantity and the quality. Men are more likely than women to worry about people's reactions if they ask for help with a problem, because strength, competence, and autonomy have traditionally been associated with the male gender role. Independence and naivety have been associated with the feminine gender role. A man who subscribes to the traditional male gender role may estimate that the social costs of asking for social support, even from close associates, are too high. Rather than suffer the potential embarrassment of asking for assistance, men are more likely to forego the help that they may truly need. A woman seeking social support, however, may be perceived as satisfying her gender role requirements while also securing the help that she may need. Recent research provides strong support for Barbie's position. For example, Berger et al. 2005 found that the more strongly men endorse traditional male ideologies, the less likely they are to seek professional help. People from different racial and ethnic groups may also show systematic differences in their willingness to seek help. For example, Black college students and adults are usually more likely than whites to seek formal help, i.e., mental health professionals, teachers, lawyers, social workers, and emergency medical personnel. As members of an ethnic minority that is often the object of prejudice and discrimination, Blacks may simply experience more stress in their day-to-day lives than do whites. This appears to be true. Studies that have compared stress levels in various ethnic groups have found that non-Hispanic whites report less stress than do Blacks, Puerto Ricans, or Mexican Americans. Help seeking also varies with age. Young children are less likely than adults to shy away from seeking help when they are faced with new challenges. One reason for this is that young children understand and accept their dependence on adults and assume that they are entitled to help and protection. In addition, because children younger than 8 years of age are not likely to make global judgments about their self-worth, concerns about self-esteem do not inhibit their help seeking. But as children get older, they become more reluctant to request help. Even by the second grade, some children begin to express concern about how others will view them if they seek help for schoolwork. They are also aware of specific social expectations. Girls, for example, say that they fear that their parents and teachers will think they are dumb if they ask for assistance in math. This trend continues through adulthood. Older adults, particularly those over 60 years of age, are less likely to seek help than are younger adults. Elderly people may be particularly concerned about maintaining, and perhaps projecting to others, a sense of personal independence and self-efficacy in their lives. These feelings of control are important to their psychological and physical well-being. Thus, just as men may not seek help for their problems in order to behave in a manner consistent with their traditional gender role, older people may be particularly reluctant to seek help in those areas of their lives in which they feel most vulnerable. Not coincidentally, these may be the areas in which their need is greatest. Personal attributes and help seeking. Turning to personal traits, self-esteem is particularly relevant to help-seeking behavior. However, the relationship between self-esteem and help-seeking appears to be moderated by the relationship between the help-seeker and the potential helper. If that person is a stranger, people with high self-esteem are often less willing than people with low self-esteem to ask for help. For instance, abused women with high self-esteem are less likely to seek treatment or counseling than abused women with low self-esteem. Maintaining self-esteem seems particularly important to people who have a very positive self-image. Because of the potential damage of help seeking to their image of competence and control, these people are hesitant to seek assistance from others. When there is a close relationship with the potential provider of support, the relationship between help seeking and self-esteem reverses. For example, Caldwell and Reinhardt, 1988, found that students with high self-esteem were somewhat more likely to receive social support from their families than were students with low self-esteem. It is reasonable to surmise that the students with high self-esteem had good relations with their families and did not feel that their self-esteem would be threatened by asking their parents or siblings for help. Another personality trait that appears to be related to help seeking is shyness. Indeed, in his book on shyness, Philip Zimbardo, 1977, argued that one of the most serious consequences of being shy is an unwillingness to ask for help. People who are shy usually have low self-esteem, but there is more to shyness than just low self-esteem. Shy individuals are also anxious and unsure of themselves in social situations and often try to avoid interacting with others. And this social anxiety affects people's ability to obtain aid from their social support network. Caldwell and Reinhardt found a negative relationship between social anxiety and the amount of social support college students received from friends, especially friends of the other sex. An additional reason why shy individuals may be reluctant to seek help is because they fear either that they will do poorly in the interaction with the helper or that the helper may simply reject their request. This latter fear has some basis in fact. DiPaolo et al., 1989, found that shy people were less likely to get help from a member of the opposite sex. This may have been a case of a self-fulfilling prophecy, that is, because the shy people expect their requests to be rejected, they act in a manner that makes this more likely. Situational influences on help seeking. Although the demographic and personal attributes of the help seeker play an important role in help seeking, the situation a person is in when the decision about seeking help arises probably has an even stronger influence on help seeking. One of the major situational determinants is the nature of the problem that confronts the person. Some problems make it less likely that people will ask for help. For example, the controllability of the problem is critical. People are particularly motivated to seek help when they believe that they are losing control of an important aspect of their life that is ultimately controllable. However, if problems persist and become so serious that people come to believe that the problems are uncontrollable, they will no longer be motivated to seek help. People may simply decide to give up. For example, Walcott, 1986, surveyed nearly 300 recently divorced people about their help-seeking actions prior to divorce. The primary factor that differentiated these couples who did seek help from those who did not was their beliefs about whether there was anything they could do to avoid a divorce. The people who did not seek help believed that the relationship could not be saved, things could not be changed, and therefore there was no need to seek help. A second important issue is how the problem relates to a person's self-concept or self-identity. When people are confronted with problems that might be seen as reflecting their self-worth or self-image, e.g. being abandoned by a spouse or lover, they might be more reluctant to seek help than those whose problems are unrelated to such considerations, e.g. the unexpected death of a spouse-lover. Nadler found almost exactly this pattern among students seeking help for academic problems. They were more reluctant to ask for help with ego-central problems. This tendency was greatest among the students who were high in self-esteem. This suggests one reason why people with problems may refuse to ask for help. They may fear the psychological costs of requesting aid, e.g. embarrassment, threat to self-esteem. A study by Lee, 2002, generally supports this conclusion. Lee examined help seeking by physicians and nurses with a new computer system within a large hospital. Individuals were less likely to seek help when they were male, in male-oriented occupations, and when the task was central to the organization's core competence. Lee found that the direct cause of this behavior was the men's perceptions of the social costs that would accompany asking for help. There are instances, however, in which people with problems related to their self-image or self-concept do turn to other people for help. The relationship with the potential helper is a key factor in the decision to initiate this action.